My name is Belinda Mason. I'm 34 years old, and I've been living in Savannah's historic district for years. Even before the morning mist has fully lifted, I love to sit by the window, flipping through the old photo albums my mother left behind. Behind those yellowed snapshots lies a principle I've held dear since childhood. Family means loyalty, even when the people you love are riddled with imperfections. This conviction, deeply ingrained in my very bones, eventually led me straight into an unexpected abyss. For the past 3 months, I've acted like a devout believer, covering every single expense for my younger sister Clara's wedding, the venue rental at the Riverside Estate, the white roses flown in from afar, the catering team that could replicate the luster of silverware, and even the band that specializes in classic jazz music. I even had someone specially embroider gold leaf initials onto the matching nightgown for her wedding dress. I never once intended to show off. I was simply drawn to that fleeting illusion of we're still a family, even though that illusion had long since crumbled into 1,000 cracks. That morning, just as I'd placed the restored ancient book into the temperature-controlled cabinet, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Clara, a single line that felt like an ice pick stabbing straight into my eyes. Belinda, we've adjusted the guest list. You don't need to come. I froze in place, my fingertips numb with cold. I kept double-checking the sender, half expecting her to send a playful correction any second now. Shaking, I typed back, "What do you mean?" The reply came almost instantly, each word cutting right to the heart. "It's just that you've eaten way too much, completely out of place at this elegant wedding." Suddenly, everything around me fell utterly silent. The scent of ink from the ancient books still lingered faintly in the air, but the gentle murmur of the Savannah River outside my window had vanished without a trace. It was I who'd painstakingly saved every penny from repairing those ancient texts, brick by brick, to build this so-called elegant wedding. It was I who'd indulged all her unrealistic demands, but in the end, I'd become the outsider, unworthy even to set foot inside this celebration. My husband, Elias, walked in carrying breakfast and immediately noticed something was off with me. He didn't ask any questions. Instead, he placed a warm glass of milk right beside my hand. His voice was low yet firm. "This time, don't push yourself anymore." I lowered my head, staring at my phone screen, where my reflection blurred faintly next to the text. The long-buried resentment that had been weighing on my heart finally broke free. I whispered to myself, softly, yet with crystal-clear conviction, "Since I'm not welcome here, the money I've been footing should just go right back where it came from." Before we move on with the story, why don't you share in the comments? Where exactly are you right now, and what time is it? I'd love to know just how far this farce of family ties and betrayal will spread. After all, every betrayal begins with a silent, subtle probing, just like the hidden currents of the Savannah River, calm on the surface, yet raging beneath. It was an afternoon. I was in the studio, restoring a 19th century poetry collection. My lunch, just half-eaten sandwich, sat on the desk beside me when my phone suddenly lit up. The name that popped up on the screen, Clara, was one I hadn't reached out to in months. Her voice came through the receiver, sweet to the point of cloying, tinged with a deliberately calculated gentleness, just like when she'd been a little girl, sneaking a peek at the candy jar. "Belinda, my dear sister, could you do me a tiny favor? Just some small things for the wedding." I asked her exactly what it was, and she let out a light chuckle, her tone as casual as if she were talking about today's weather. "Oh, the deposit for the venue, catering quotes, maybe even a few decorations or so. As soon as I've got a bit more cash on hand, I'll pay you right back." Her voice sounded as though those sums of money were nothing but fallen leaves by the roadside, easy to pick up whenever you feel like it, only to have them blown right back into your hands by the next gust of wind. I want to believe her. Her voice sounds so much like the little girl who used to follow close behind me as a child, the one who needed my protection. But this time, what she's asking for isn't just a candy. It's thousands of dollars, a sum that could wipe out half a year's worth of my hard work and effort. That evening, I told Elias about Clara's request. He was reading a book, then looked up with eyes full of concern. A little favor now could easily turn into an endless, bottomless pit. I forced myself to sound casual and brushed it off. This is the one and only wedding of her life. She deserves to have it go smoothly. He didn't argue. He just nodded calmly, his eyes revealing a quiet understanding of the outcome he'd already foreseen. 2 days later, my mother Marjorie suddenly called and invited me to dinner at a candlelit restaurant in the old town. This rare invitation immediately put me on guard. As soon as I sat down, I saw right through her intentions. "Dear Belinda," she said with a fake smile, "Clara just can't handle all the wedding preparations. Since you're the older sister, you'll have to pitch in a bit more." "I've already taken care of the venue," I replied calmly. She immediately chimed in, praising how beautiful Riverside Estate was, and then dropped that familiar line, "You're the most sensible and responsible one." Restoring ancient books is a stable and respectable job. Family members should always look out for each other. This rhetoric, which cloaks guilt in the guise of familial love, was nothing more than a subtle attempt to force me into compliance. My father, Harold, had remained silent throughout the entire exchange. Only after Marjorie finished speaking did he finally speak up, his tone calm yet suffused with an undercurrent of pressure. "You have a steady income. It's only right that you help your sister. Clara isn't as lucky as you are to have a decent job." That single sentence shattered my defenses completely. I'd wanted to argue back, but I knew full well that any resistance would only lead to even greater moral coercion. "Fine," I said, taking a deep breath, my voice tight with tension. "I'll take care of the venue issue." Marjorie immediately gripped my hand tightly, her grip almost as if she were confirming her victory. "Now that's my good girl." The next day, I went to Riverside Estate as scheduled to meet the event coordinator. She efficiently informed me that a 50% deposit was required to secure the date. I took out my checkbook and carefully signed my name. Clara was written in the customer's column. My handwriting was steady, yet inside, my heart was churning with turmoil. I kept repeating to myself that this was for the sake of my family. I felt both grateful for the chance to help and deeply aware of a quiet voice reminding me that this was wrong. Over the weekend, when Elias was cooking, he asked about the deposit. I nodded and explained what had happened. He paused his work and looked at me intently. "Are you sure this isn't some kind of scheme orchestrated by her and her daughter?" I smiled and evaded his question. "We're all family. What could possibly go wrong?" He didn't press any further. As he turned away, his eyes were filled with resignation. That evening, as I sorted through the receipts, I couldn't help but sigh at the total amount. I realized the sum was enough to cover a year's tuition. It was no small matter. Yet I still convinced myself that this was exactly what my older sister should do, stepping up to ease the burden on our family. As I flipped through the photos of the venue, my inner doubts began to surface. I wasn't just paying for the wedding. I was buying silence, peace, and a sense of belonging. 2 days later, the bank notified me that the payment had been received. But there was no thank you note, no phone call, no text message. Just a dwindling balance and a sense of helplessness at having crossed a boundary. What had started as a quick errand soon turned into a shopping spree I hadn't agreed to. Early Monday morning, just as I was getting ready for work, Clara sent me a message. "Belinda, it's just a small thing. My favorite dress is sold out, but Ollie Studio's new collection is even more elegant. Could you please pay the deposit for me? I'll reimburse you as soon as my card starts working again." The word deposit gradually became a family tradition. I didn't reply right away, but 15 minutes later, she sent another text, her tone confident. "It's only $3,000. I'll send you the receipt later." There was no room for doubt. It was simply an expectation that felt entirely natural. I opened the bank app and stared at the balance steadily declining, unable to stop myself from wondering, when did generosity quietly turn into obligation? At lunchtime, I received an email from my mother, Marjorie, with the subject line, "A little thing on the big day." Inside was a list detailing floral arrangements and photography upgrades, ending with the words, "Even a little help means so much," signed off with "Love, your mom." I could almost hear her gentle, yet manipulative, tone. I didn't reply. I'd hoped that silence would put an end to it all, but in my family, silence was never taken as a refusal. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again. A text from my dad, Harold, his tone strictly business. "Just try to cheer your mom up." There were no greetings or explanations, only an order disguised as concern. I read those words over and over, feeling an overwhelming weight pressing down on my chest. By the end of that weekend, my inbox and message logs looked like a wedding catalog. Clarissa had sent photos of shoes, centerpieces, champagne brands, and even the bridal robe. This one's only $600. They're giving us a discount. It's all to make the guests comfortable. Each message was disguised as a request for an update. I started responding less and less until I stopped replying altogether, but those requests just kept coming. It wasn't until the florist called to confirm a color theme I'd never chosen that I realized Clarissa had already given them my phone number and billing address. "We're just double-checking your payment method," the woman said cheerfully. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the ceiling, half laughing, half wanting to scream. They'd turned me into an invisible sponsor, someone who funds dreams yet is never invited to witness them. That evening, Ethan and I sat at the kitchen table, receipts spread out before us like fallen leaves. "You're their safety net," he said softly, "not their big sister." I frowned, tracing the numbers with my finger. "I'm just trying to keep things running smoothly," I whispered. He leaned back slightly and asked, "Is it to make things go smoothly for them, or just to put your own mind at ease?" I didn't answer. It was humiliating to realize that love could so easily be mistaken for permission. My parents taught me that family meant giving, yet they never explained when it was time to stop. Every request carried a hint of guilt. If I said no, I'd be selfish. If I said yes, I'd be dependable. Somewhere along the way, being dependable had somehow become synonymous with being convenient. At night, I couldn't help but keep checking my phone over and over again, afraid of missing a new message asking for something. Clarissa sent the most messages. Sometimes she'd share a link to a string quartet, other times she'd send a discount code for a photographer, and then there were those voice notes, giggling cheerfully as she reported how smoothly everything was going. I deliberately ignored her, but she seemed completely oblivious. The next morning, she sent another reminder about catering expenses. "We need to finalize the menu today." By this point, total expenses had already exceeded $15,000, and I jotted it down in my spreadsheet, not out of any hope of getting the money back, but simply because it was the only part of this whole farce I could actually keep track of. I told Ethan the amount, and he let out a slow, heavy sigh, as if watching a car crash played in slow motion. "Cass, they've already treated your money like their budget, not like help." I gave a forced laugh, the lie stuck in my throat. "Just hang on until the wedding's over." Later that evening, while sorting through my emails, I came across another message from Margaret, accompanied by the band's deposit invoice. "Forgot to mention, Clarissa is so lucky to have a sister like you." The words were sweetly wrapped in sugar, yet beneath lay a sharp edge. Without replying, I closed my laptop and suddenly realized they'd never once said thank you. On Saturday, while Ethan was mowing the lawn, I checked my account again and found nearly $20,000 missing, money that had gone straight into a wedding that had nothing to do with me, into a family that treated generosity like an obligation. I stared at the numbers until they blurred, then closed the app and flipped my phone face down. In the hum of the air conditioner, all that remained was exhaustion, settling deep behind my ribs, turning patience into a heavy burden. I knew something had changed. The boundary between kindness and self-sacrifice had long since been blurred by myself. 2 weeks before the wedding, a message in our family group chat became the spark that set it off. While I was at work, Clarissa sent a message, "Adults only, dress elegantly and simply," accompanied by a heart-flashing emoji, but her tone was icy cold. I scrolled through the seating chart she'd attached and froze instantly. In the color-coded list, family members were marked gold, friends blue, and suppliers gray, yet there wasn't a single mention of me. I typed out 2 questions, then deleted them both. Finally, I picked up the phone and called her. After 3 rings, she answered, her voice sweetly saccharine yet strangely distant. "Hey Cass, what's up?" I forced myself to sound calm. "I'm not on the guest list." There was a long, drawn-out silence, then her tone shifted to one that sounded almost rehearsed. "Oh, we've made a change. Weddings are all about harmony. Your style will ruin the photos," she said. I was taken aback for a moment. What did you just say? She sighed softly, pretending to be patient. Your style is way too flashy. It doesn't match the minimalist theme, not that it's personal, mind you. I almost burst out laughing, spending my own money on a wedding, and yet she's tossing me out for this reason, claiming it's not even personal? You're overreacting. It's just one day, don't make such a big deal out of it. Then she hung up quickly. The silence that followed the humiliation was even more piercing than any noise could have been. 10 minutes later, Howard sent a forward message. Stop it already. Let it go. No greeting, just an imperious command. I didn't reply. That evening, as I drove home, Margaret's phone rang again. After hesitating for a moment, I answered. Her tone was soft, but laced with hypocrisy. Cass, honey, please don't embarrass the family, okay? Embarrass them? I gripped the steering wheel tightly and shot back. I've been paying for the wedding for months already. She took a shallow breath and said, We're really grateful, but this is Clarissa's special day. She's got artistic talent, and she has her own vision. And yet, this very talent was being used to erase her own older sister. Seeing that I wasn't convinced, her patience began to wear thin. Come on, don't make such a big deal out of it. Everyone on social media will judge anyway. Don't you want to spare her any discomfort? My hand trembled, and I almost took the wrong turn. It's not me she's uncomfortable around. It's because of my very presence. After a pause, she spoke in her usual decisive tone. Let's drop it. It's just one day. Just be generous for once. Then she hung up. Back home, Ethan was stirring soup in the kitchen. At first glance, he saw right through my odd behavior. What did they do to you? I nodded and flung my phone onto the counter. Clarissa removed me from the guest list, saying I'd ruin the photos. What about your parents? Just leave me alone and stop making a fuss. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his eyes brimming with silent fury. So they've erased you, and yet they're still spending your money? My throat tightened, and I couldn't utter a word. The bubbling sound of soup filled the silence. After what felt like an eternity, I finally managed to say, maybe they'll realize just how cruel they've been. Ethan shook his head, his voice unnaturally calm. The people who erased you? They'll never wake up. All they're hoping for is that you'll keep funding their delusions. That evening, I sat on the sofa, scrolling through updates in the wedding group chat. Clarissa had posted a sketch of the table arrangements, and my parents had each liked it and sent heart emojis in response. I could feel it so vividly, I was becoming invisible. My contributions, my name, my efforts, all of it had been completely erased, as if I'd never existed at all. As I stared at the photo Clarissa had shared, a white floral arch by the lake, paid for by me, I saw only my own reflection on the screen, as if that were the sole proof of my existence. A clear thought emerged. I had crafted their celebration, yet they were building it on the foundation of my sacrifice. I picked up my phone and opened the banking app, hovering over the last prepayment for the catering. My pulse gradually steadied. Since I'd been left out, my money might as well be too. The morning of the Baton Rouge wedding was unusually quiet, a stifling stillness, as if something were about to shatter. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, and I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open, a cup of cold coffee beside me. The screen displayed a spreadsheet brimming with receipts, invoices, and payment records, every single penny I'd poured into Clarissa's dream. My name appeared at the top of every contract, bold and unmistakable, a testament that I'd built this day from scratch. Strangely enough, I was both the architect and the ghost, lingering on its very edge. First, I reached out to the florist. This is Cassandra Holt, I said calmly and politely. The client has changed the event terms, so please suspend all services. The woman on the other end of the line hesitated for a moment, clearly uncertain. Suspend? Does that mean cancel? For now, yes, until further notice, I replied. After checking the system for a moment, she confirmed, the contract is under your name, so there's no problem. I thanked her, hung up, and felt as though the first thread binding me had begun to loosen. Next, I contacted the catering provider. The manager immediately recognized me. Hi, Ms. Holt, delivery is scheduled for 2 p.m. Is there anything I should know? Yes, I said, according to this agreement, the client is no longer authorized. Please suspend the order and arrange a partial refund. He fell silent for a moment, then simply said, "Got it." By the time I reached out to the lighting team, the atmosphere around me had already shifted. My hands no longer trembled. Every phone call felt easier and more precise, almost like a rhythm. Some suppliers sounded confused, while others didn't ask a single question. As soon as I confirmed that the payment had indeed come from my account, one man even chuckled softly and said, "You're the calmest cancellation client I've dealt with this month." I smiled at myself and replied, "This isn't a cancellation, it's a correction." Ethan appeared in the doorway halfway through my call, a towel draped over his shoulder, watching me closely. "Are you really going through with this?" "Yes." "Is this revenge?" he asked. I looked up at him and shook my head. "No, it's a correction." The words came out smoothly, unnaturally calm, as if they'd been waiting all along for just the right moment to be spoken. After making the last call, I closed my laptop and leaned back. The silence in the house no longer weighed on me. It felt clean, light, exactly what I'd earned. Sunlight streamed across the counter, illuminating every corner of the room. Somewhere in the city, Clarissa might be sitting in her makeup chair right now, smiling at the camera, completely unaware that her perfect day had already begun to unravel. By noon, my phone was flooded with missed calls, mostly from numbers I didn't recognize, probably attempts to reach her supplier. I ignored them all. The emails confirmed the refund and the suspension of the service. Each new message felt like a thread being cut, freeing me from the bonds that had held me captive. Ethan sat down beside me. "Do you think they'll notice before the ceremony?" "Probably not," I said. "They never read the contract, they just make excuses." He let out a short laugh. "Remind me never to mess with you." I tilted my lips upward just slightly. "Then you'll have to erase me first." At 2 p.m., the wedding was supposed to begin, but chaos erupted instead. Someone had definitely started a live stream because my screen was flooded with notifications. I hesitated for a moment, then clicked on one of them. The video showed the lakeside venue bathed in blinding sunlight. The wooden archway stood stark and bare. The chairs were neatly arranged yet devoid of flowers. The tables weren't even covered with tablecloths. Guests wandered around in confusion, their murmurs audible even through the loudspeakers. Clarissa appeared at the center of the frame. Her white wedding dress seemed painfully glaring against the monotonous backdrop. She clutched her phone tightly, shouting at someone off camera, her gestures frantic and desperate. Even without sound, I could read her lips. "What do you mean, cancel?" Behind her, Margaret and Howard stood frozen, their faces pale. As whispers among the crowd grew louder and louder, their composure began to crumble. The perfect image they'd gone to great lengths to create was collapsing in real time. I didn't feel victory or satisfaction, only a profound sense of calm, the kind that comes when you finally stop taking responsibility for other people's storms. The comment section of the live stream was flooded with messages. Who could ever forget the flowers? It looks like it's been cursed. This is karma unfolding in real time. I turned down the volume and took a slow sip of my latte. From where I sat, the cafe's window framed the scene across the lake just like a movie. Guests were starting to leave, their high heels sinking into the soft grass. The band was packing up instruments they'd never even played, and white tablecloths fluttered in the wind like surrender flags. My reflection shimmered faintly on the glass, steady, composed, finally free. A few minutes later, Ethan arrived and sat down across from me. "It's all over the internet," he said. Clarissa's wedding was a total disaster. I stirred my coffee, watching the swirls gradually fade away. "The word mess up really fits, doesn't it?" he asked. "Do you regret it?" I said no. "I've just put everything back where it belongs." He leaned back, fell silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "They'll come looking for you." "Let them come," I whispered softly. I'm sick of silence. The live broadcast was over, replaced by dozens of short videos circulating across various platforms. The perfect image Clarissa had so painstakingly tried to create had now become an open joke. Amid all this chaos, something deep inside me grew calmer. Balance had finally been restored. As we stepped out of the cafe, sunlight sparkled on the surface of the lake. The venue was now empty, Chairs lay overturned, and petals were scattered everywhere, carried by the wind. I glanced at it one last time, almost whispering to myself, now it actually looks elegant. By morning, Baton Rouge was buzzing with unease. Every cafe and grocery store line was filled with people replaying the same video clips on their phones. The chaos from Clarissa's wedding had spread across the entire internet overnight. Local radio hosts were debating what had gone wrong, while news anchors recounted the scene as if it were a documentary about hubris. When I woke up, I found myself flooded with notifications, but not a single one came from my family. Instead, Clarissa's post appeared first. My sister ruined my wedding out of jealousy. Her photo was soaked with tears, mascara streaming down her cheeks, and she was still clutching a wilted bouquet in her hand. Her caption dripped with self-pity, and for a while, it worked. The comment section overflowed with sympathy. Strangers rallied to her defense, calling me cruel, selfish, and mentally unstable. I read it all in silence, without anger, just a sense of detachment, as if watching a storm through thick glass. Then, just before noon, the first crack appeared. A local photographer uploaded a screenshot of a payment contract signed by Cassandra Holt. His caption read, "For transparency's sake, she paid for the entire event." Within minutes, everything had changed. Sympathy gave way to suspicion, and suspicion turned into outrage. Screenshots of text message exchanges, receipts, and reservation details began surfacing one after another. Finally, that one phrase, like gasoline spreading across the internet, burst forth. "She ate way too much. This is a high-class affair." That sentence became front-page news. Reaction videos started popping up every hour, and someone even titled her post, "She took her sister's money, but kicked her sister out of the wedding." The comment section erupted in fury. "Just imagine humiliating the person who funded you. Money can't buy class. She deserves it." The tide had completely turned. Clarissa tried to salvage the situation. She deleted the original post and uploaded a new one. "Please stop the hate. This is going too far." But the damage was already irreversible. Brands began pulling out of their collaborations one after another. The local boutique salon, even a jewelry store that had once promoted her engagement event, all issued statements severing ties. Her name, once featured in glamorous posts, now appeared under the hashtag bride-to-be's family scam, becoming a hot topic across Louisiana. Margaret and Howard seemed summoned by the crisis itself. They stepped forward. My mom was the first to call. Her voice, carefully maintaining composure, sounded surprisingly fragile. "You've got to put an end to all this," she said. "Clarissa is being bullied." "No," I replied calmly. "Clarissa is being exposed." That evening, the two of them appeared together on a local morning show, speaking in a tone that suggested they were misunderstood victims. Margaret told the host that family disputes should be resolved privately, insisting that I'd misinterpreted Clarissa's intentions. The interview almost managed to convince people, until late that same night, when an email thread between Margaret and Clarissa surfaced, revealing their discussion about how to persuade Cass to pay for the upgrade. The fateful words, which would seal their fate, were, "If you call it a family investment, she won't say no." Within hours, the video had gone viral across the entire internet, and the show quietly removed the interview from its official page. Early the next morning, my inbox was once again flooded with messages, but this time, the tone was entirely different. Strangers have been sending their apologies one after another, and some suppliers have even reached out to express their gratitude for the dignified way I handled the whole situation. I didn't reply. After all, silence is ultimately more powerful than any defense. Ethan was flipping through his phone on the other side of the kitchen, keeping an eye on the unfolding drama. "They're trending again," he whispered softly. "Clarissa's sponsorship has been pulled, and your mom's emails have been made public too." I nodded, stirring my coffee. It wasn't me who exposed it, it was the truth. He paused for a moment, then looked at me thoughtfully. If it had been anyone else, they'd probably have written a long essay, getting sucked into the uproar. I gave a faint smile. "No, let silence be the final word on this story." That evening, I sat on the balcony, watching the city lights shimmer across the water on the opposite shore. The evening breeze was cool yet steady, carrying with it an almost tranquil aura. Clarissa's social media page had been set to private, and Margaret and Howard had vanished from TV screens as well. The noise that had once filled my mind had finally given way to peace. Ironically, for years they've been teaching me to maintain peace, uphold the family's image, and advising me never to speak, claiming that silence could save our reputation. Yet it was precisely this very silence they defined that built a prison of lies. In the end, their world crumbled while my life remained intact. After skimming through the last few headlines, I locked my phone. Ethan brought over 2 cups of tea and sat down beside me, leaning against the railing. "What's next?" he asked. "Nothing," I replied, gazing at the shimmering surface of the water. "They're reaping what they've sown. I'll just keep moving forward." "Do you think they'll ever apologize?" he asked. I paused for a moment, then whispered softly, "They've already apologized, not with words, but with everything they've lost." For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. No longer burdened by guilt, no longer yearning to be understood. The truth has spoken for me, and the world has finally heard. 1 year has passed since that wedding that never took place, and life has quietly returned to its course in unexpected ways. The hustle and bustle have faded. The city has forgotten the past. Yet the silence that has followed is entirely different, gentler, more grounded, a tenderness earned through my own efforts. In a sun-drenched corner of Savannah's historic district, I've opened an antique book restoration studio. The small space boasts high ceilings and walls painted in a soft beige hue. A glass door bears the sign, Mason's Antique Book Restoration. My very first project comes from a private library, a collection of 18th century letters awaiting restoration. The moment I signed the contract, I felt a long-lost sense of belonging and direction, a deep inner peace that required no external validation. Work has filled my days, and the satisfaction of seeing blueprints come to life feels far more grounding to me than any apology ever could. Ethan often jokes that the way I've designed this room mirrors my own personal reconstruction, careful step by step, building up layer by layer. At the same time, the parents gradually ended up becoming exactly the kind of people they once feared, spending their days in silence, their reputations ruined. Howard lost his seat on the church board after the emails were exposed, and Margaret's social luncheons, once so popular, were forced to shut down because no one showed up anymore. Neighbors who'd once praised their family's values now went out of their way to avoid them. Clarissa, once a star spokesperson for bridal events, got divorced just months after her wedding. Her husband went bankrupt, her sponsors pulled out, and she eventually moved back into her parents' home, the very place where I'd once felt utterly invisible. The tabloids had long since shifted their focus, but the town's memory never faded. I didn't seek revenge. Watching the consequences unfold on their own was enough. This time, the world corrected its own mistakes without needing my voice to force justice. I threw myself into my work, dedicating myself to restoring ancient books that bore the marks of time. Amidst the yellowed pages and faded ink, I found the very selves they'd tried so desperately to erase, a self that could exist without anyone's permission. One afternoon, I was reviewing the draft sketches of an ancient book that a client had sent over when my inbox pinged with a new message. The sender was Marjorie Mason, and the subject line simply read, "Help." I didn't open it. My hand hovered for a second, yet there wasn't the slightest hesitation, only clear awareness. I clicked delete. Peace doesn't come from forgiving them. It comes from no longer paying the price for your own humiliation. A week later, my friend Sybil came to the studio. When everything had fallen apart, she was the only one who hadn't taken sides, the only one who'd brought hot tea instead of questions. She looked around the finished space and smiled. "You've really made this place your own," she said. I nodded and set down the magnifying glass I'd been holding. "When it's built with real things, it just feels different," I replied. She hesitated for a moment, then asked softly, "Do you regret it? Do you regret anything?" I looked up at her, recalling everything, the silences, the losses, the storm that had torn down old walls only to build new ones. "No," I finally said. "I've stopped paying for my own humiliation. This is a price I'll never pay again." Sybil smiled, a knowing smile, and without saying another word, she left. Some friendships don't need explanation. They simply make room for the truth. That evening, sitting at my desk with the camera rolling, I recorded the final words of a story I'd never intended to share, but one I felt it was essential to bring to a proper close. The red light blinked steadily. When you forget your own boundaries, family can hurt you, I began, my voice calm yet firm. Kindness without limits isn't love, it's surrender. Sometimes, leaving isn't cruel, it's the only way to ensure peace endures. I paused for a few seconds, letting the silence linger, then continued, thanks for listening until the end. Share your thoughts, would you make the same choice?